Thanks, Cardi. I want you to think about that first day of a brand new job you were starting and how excited you were. What were you thinking? What were you feeling inside? What type of impression did you want to make on your colleagues? What goals did you set for yourself? Now let me take you back to 2007, and I am unanimously voted in by the owners of the CFL to become their 12th commissioner. On that first day on the job, I'm given that cool business card with the fancy title of commissioner. I'm showed that nice corner office like any executive. And I'm told, because of that unanimous vote, that I have the confidence and the trust of the owners to lead a league that's been around for almost 100 years. And in my first major initiative with the league, I failed. I remember my opening press conference. All the media, there's about 50 media in the room from across Canada, and they start grilling me. They're saying, "Commissioner, when are you bringing a team back to the nation's capital?" They're asking this question because the team there had failed 3 times in a row over the last 2 decades because of absentee owners, guys who didn't live in the community, and guys who couldn't afford to have a professional sports team. I ponder the question, I really think about it, and I say, this is one of my major priorities, but we're going to get it right this time. We're going to find local community leaders, local builders who can really bring football back to Ottawa. Well, a few months go by. I spend a lot of time in the nation's capital, meet a lot of people, and I meet this amazing group of business leaders. They are huge football fans, of course. They are city builders, and they are some of the wealthiest Canadians. Now my job, all I have to do is pretty simple. I just have to convince the 8 owners of the CFL to vote these guys in. So what do I do like any commissioner? I get on the phone, I start talking to the majority of CFL owners. There's a few older guys that I ignore. I know they might be a little bit curmudgeon-y. I send out due diligence packages and agreements that all the owners can read. I tell the team at the CFL office, get ready, we're going to do a press announcement. And I set up a conference call with all of the owners so I can vote this group in Ottawa in. It's a late night conference call, so I actually take it from home. Now that's my first mistake. I walk into the house and my 1-year-old daughter Parker is screaming like crazy, just crying. So I go up into our bedroom and I lock the door. I can still hear her crying. So I walk into our closet and lock the door, and I'm the commissioner of a professional league, and I'm taking this important call from my bedroom. No, it's from my closet, amongst my shirts and ties. I start the phone call, and immediately, this owner has been around the league for 30 years, says, "Mark, why are we even going back to the nation's capital? We have failed in the past there." Another owner who's also a lawyer, and I won't hold that against him, starts nitpicking the agreement. All those owners that I had spoken to who said to me, "Mark, this is going to be a slam dunk, it'll be a touchdown, you will get this approved," are stone quiet on the call. I look in the mirror. This artery right here is pumping. I am red in the face. I put the phone on mute, and I scream like, "Ah!" I get back on the phone knowing that the vote is not going my way. And I say, "Gentlemen," I said, I need more time. And we delay the vote. I had mistakenly thought, because I had just been unanimously voted in by the owners, that I had their trust, that I had their confidence. And that was my major mistake. So how did I get this so wrong? I had had other leadership roles, but how did I get this so wrong when I grew up in a household with a father who was such a trusted business and community leader? My dad is George Cohon. He was the first international licensee for McDonald's and the man who founded Ronald McDonald House here in Canada. And I remember at such a young age, 5 or 6 years old, every weekend, my dad would load me and my older brother Craig up in the back of his station wagon, and we go tour his restaurants. We pull into the parking lot, we jump out of the car, and we'd pick up any litter that was in the parking lot. Like little puppies, we would follow him into the restaurant, and he would go table to table to table, talking to people. How's your food? How is the service? What are you doing today? We walk into the back of the restaurant and talk to all the staff, all the employees. It was amazing. I was such a little boy. They teach me how to make French fries and how to dress a burger. We then go into the back of the restaurant in this small little office, and for about 10 or 15 minutes, I might be sitting on my dad's knee, and he'd be talking to the manager. I didn't understand it then, what he was doing. I thought it was just a fun outing with my brother and my dad, and I could eat a lot of French fries over the weekend. But when I was struggling in those early days as commissioner, I really started to understand what he was doing. He was out there listening and learning. He was living the values of his company. Anyone here who had their first job at McDonald's would know quality, service, cleanliness, and value. And more important than ever, he was taking the time to connect with his employees and with customers to build trust in him, and I think trust in his company. Now that word trust is so important today for all of us in this room. If you look at the Edelman Global Trust Barometer, they say that trust in our government leaders, obviously, trust in governments, trust in NGOs, and trust in the media is at historical lows. There's one silver lining in all this, which was really surprising to me. It actually says that trust in our employers and trust in corporate leaders is growing. I was actually quite surprised by that, because if we all invited a whole bunch of CEOs up here on the stage and we asked them, what are the 5 most important things that are on your list? They'd probably say shareholder value, increased profit margins, cut costs, how can we get into, new markets? They wouldn't say building trust. And for me, that would be a major mistake. This Edelman report goes on to give some advice to modern day CEOs, and they say 3 simple things. They say, live the values of your company, speak directly to people, and be visible inside and outside your organization. I laughed when I saw that, because that is right out of my father's playbook from the 1970s. And it is a playbook. When I was thrust into this role, this high-profile role as commissioner, that I failed to memorize the play. Now, most people don't know what a commissioner does. It's a pretty complicated role. But you oversee the business of the league, the national TV deals, the sponsorships, the licensing, things like the Grey Cup or the Super Bowl or the NBA Finals. But you also look after the game, the officiating, the trades between teams, the rules, and most importantly, also the discipline. Think of the commissioner, and this might be a bizarre way of thinking about it. The commissioner is the Nona of the football family. Roger Goodell might not agree with that, but absolutely. At one moment, you are the steward of the league, and the next moment, if someone does something bad in the league, whether it's a player, whether it's an official, whether it's even an owner, you are the person doling out that discipline. Everyone trusts their Nona, and trust is the currency that every commissioner is judged in. And when I started to understand that important point, that's really when I started to connect with people. I went back to those owners, the ones that I said were a little bit curmudgeony and older, and I sat down with them. And I spent hours and hours with them. And I understood and I learned and I listened from them what their concerns were. And we ended up striking a better deal. And today, the Ottawa Redblacks are one of the most successful teams in the Canadian Football League and rejuvenated that town. But if I was going to be true to myself and that little boy that was scurrying around the restaurant and following his dad all over the place, I said to our team, we need to put our fans at the center of everything that we do. Although I report to the owners, our success was going to be really driven by our fans. So we did some really fun things. I remember doing tweet-ups where I invite fans to meet me at this local bar, and I would say what bar I was at, and I will buy the first round of drinks. For football fans, that was really dumb. About 400 people showed up at the first one in Regina, and my credit card, I got a call from RBC. It was unbelievable. But one of the most fun things we did to try and connect with our fans and build that trust was around the 100th Grey Cup right here in Toronto. This iconic symbol of our league, this 13-pound cup, which is also a symbol of our country, traveled 8,000 kilometers across Canada that year. By boat, by train, by car, by plane up to Iqaluit, and even by horseback. And in those last 5 kilometers, I said to my team at the CFL, let's allow the fans to carry that cup. No other professional sports league in the world had ever allowed their fans to do that. My team thought I was a little bit crazy, but I said, trust me, they will treat this cup as if it's their child. They will not drop it. So as the crow flies, we started this Grey Cup fan march at Varsity Stadium. About 500 people, about the size of this audience, was in the crowd, and I passed the cup to this first young boy who was 14 years old, a fan of the Toronto Argonauts. We started to walk along Bloor Street. About 500 people, every 20 yards, not meters, 20 yards, because that's a football term, we passed the cup to the next fan. By the time we got to Yonge and Bloor, there were about 3,000 people. We turned south on Yonge Street. By the time we got to Dundas Square and passed the cup to about 1,000 people, the police said there were 10,000 people. They weren't supposed to close down the streets. They closed down all the streets on the way down to the Rogers Centre. By the time we got to the Rogers Centre, there were 25,000 people who had joined that march. At that moment in time, I realized I was not a commissioner of a professional sports league. I was one fan connecting with a sea of fans around a game that we all love. And I learned some important things that day. I learned that trust doesn't come from a fancy title like commissioner. Trust doesn't come from a unanimous vote. Trust doesn't come because your signature is on every official game ball. Trust comes from making one-on-one connections, and trust is a march that we all of us, must make together, and that is what we must demand of our leaders every single day. If I think about my life, it came full circle recently. My daughter Parker, who's now 13, and my wife Suzanne were up at our cottage, and we wanted to paint a small little shed. So Parker and I go out to the local hardware store to pick up some paint. We pick up the paint samples, and we're checking out at the counter, and the gentleman behind the counter says to me, "Hey, Commish, I know you're no longer in the role, but do you remember about 5 or 6 years ago, you were at the Rogers Centre walking on the field. You came up to me and my daughter, and you talked to us for about 5 or 6 minutes. In the break in the play, you brought some players over to us, and we took a bunch of pictures. It was great, and I just want to say thank you. And I want to ask you, do you miss the CFL?" And I said to him, "No, it was a great run, and I'm doing some fun things for Canada. I'm chairing the Juno Awards. I'm one of the owners of this fast-growing spirits company." And he said, "Commish, stop talking." He was really passionate. He said, "Stop talking." He said, "I drink your gin smash because I know you are involved with the business." I paused for a minute. I said, "Thank you," and I had a huge smile on my face. And I got back in the car with Parker, and she was wondering why I was grinning. And I thought 2 important things at that moment. Number one, that it proved to me that making connections, even if they're brief connections, can build trust, and it can build trust that endures over time. And more importantly, I had hoped in that moment, Parker had learned something from me, just like I had learned so much from my father. Thank you very much.